I'm Peter Westerby. Some of you might know me, some might not. Used to be at Queensland Uni, QUT, now mostly work with Community Praxis Cooperative. And I'm really delighted to welcome you to our seminar. I'm here with Rachel Donovan, who's waving her hands. We're with Community Praxis Cooperative. We're registered at Maleny, Ginnaburra country. And for this project that's called the Community Enterprise Initiative, we're working in partnership with the Nunda Cooperative. And I actually do want to acknowledge both our cooperatives are 25 years old. And we're both planning big celebrations this year. Richard, could you unmute yourself and at least say hello as one of the kind of partners of this project?
Thanks, Peter. Hello, everybody. Great to have everybody here. I'm the coordinator or CEO of Nunda Co-op on Turrbal and Yagara lands here. And yeah, 25 years. And we're really excited to be partnering with another 25-year-old co-op Praxis. Also, we're involved. It's QSEX, the Social Enterprise Council's 10th anniversary this year, which is really another community initiative of a community of social enterprises coming together to build support for the movement in this state. So great to partner with QSEC on this. And also Neighbourhood Centres Queensland, who are the peak body for hundreds of neighbourhood and community centres in Queensland, and acknowledging that many emerging social enterprises have been supported or have come out of neighbourhood centre activity, promoting local economic support to people from disadvantaged backgrounds or local community need. So anyway, yeah. That's me. That's a bit of a thank you to everyone too. Yeah. Yeah,
so just, I will bit more setting the scene. So Praxis and Nunda Co-op have been running face-to-face workshops in the Darling Downs area, the Moreton region and the Sunshine Coast. So we've been learning a lot with neighbourhood centres, but we wanted to offer this online seminar across the state. So we've partnered with Neighbourhood Centres Queensland. Chris is on my left. Would you like to say hello? I'm sure everyone knows you.
Hi everyone, Chris Mundy from Neighbourhood Centres Queensland on Gubby Gubby country.
Thank you, Chris. And then on my right is Elise Parups, who we also partnered for today, the Queensland Social Enterprise Council, and Elise is the CEO. So do you want to say hello, Elise?
Hello, everybody. My heartland is in Quandamooka. I'm coming to you from Kulin Nation today in Melbourne, which is actually really sunny and hot, unusually so for Melbourne. And it's a little bit of a weird situation where I'm zooming in. I feel like I'm on an outsider today, zooming in from Kulin Nation. But I'm so grateful to be here today, and the fantastic work from Richard and Praxis. To be working with Chris and the neighbourhood centres. Wow, you know, what a wonderful initiative this has been, and we've seen such amazing work from you guys. So thank you so much for having us here today.
Fabulous. Thank you. Look, we don't have time to go around the whole room, and I struggle with this. I'm aware many of you are probably multitasking. And I said to my partner, Rachel, this morning, do I just kind of be easy on everyone and just say, you know, have one ear listening in on this seminar and the other ear doing all the other work? Or do I be hard on people and say, put your feet on the ground, take your hands off the email and be present? And I didn't come to a conclusion. So, I'm just making conscious that we all have those choices and, how to be present, how to do all the work. But we have a pretty exciting little program. our objective, I want to be very clear today, is not lots of dialogue, because an hour and a half on the screen is not conducive for that. Our objective is a bit of inspiration through some stories. We're going to hear at least 2 stories through video and an opportunity to talk to the key people that were part of those stories. So inspiration, we realize many people, you know, energy and inspiration is what matters to make things happen in the world. And some information about what social enterprises are, what they can mean in the context of neighbourhood and community centres. And then we'll kind of be, I guess, giving people information about where to go from here. And there are a whole bunch of options we'll give you as we move into the second half of the seminar. We will have a break, 5 minutes at 11:45. So, you know, you stretch your body, go to the toilet. You know, we can't sit for an hour and a half. That's bad practice, okay? So we really want to kind of you to come away from today clear what a social enterprise is. So are you ready to rock and roll? Yeah? If you're a bit new, just turned up and you haven't put your name in chat and where you're from and your country you're on, please do that. We are recording this so that it can be a resource for people in the future. We'll tell you about other resources. So look, the very first thing we actually want to do is we're going to put a link to a 1-minute YouTube video into the chat. Okay, and Chris, if you could do that. Don't push on it yet. It's a kind of funky corporate oriented 1-minute video, kind of really titled Change the Game, about social enterprises. So we're going to put it in the link. We're going to ask you to push on the link and bring it up on your browser. It's difficult to run a YouTube through a Zoom. So it will only be 1 minute. Please watch it by yourself or if you're others in the room. From that YouTube, there are 2 questions. So please consider these 2 questions. 1, what is a social enterprise? And 2, what's the game we're trying to change? Because it's called Change the Game. Okay? Is that clear? So Chris has put the link in. Please.
And before everyone jumps there, I'm just wondering if we could just acknowledge the traditional owners as well on the lands in which we're meeting from all around the state, the traditional custodians. I'm on Gubbi Gubbi country and would just like to pay my respect to the elders past, present and emerging, and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islanders who have joined us here today.
Fabulous, Chris. I kind of got confused because we've acknowledged all the countries on in the chat, but to do a formal acknowledgement, thank you for reminding me, and apologies. So let's push that button, watch that YouTube in your own browser with those 2 questions. What's a social enterprise and what's the game we're trying to change? And then when you've watched it, feel free to put some answers into the chat function, please. Okay?
I'll try again.
All right. So I wonder if people are watching it or have watched it. Put a thumbs up if you've watched it. Yeah. So I'm watching the chat, thousands of small acts. That's the game, to change the game that we're trying to achieve. Yeah, what other? The game is social justice, social injustice, people before profits. These are great answers. And I guess, and Elise might want to add to this, a few of us were at the World Social Enterprise Conference late last year, and there was a big discussion about, should we define social enterprise narrowly, or should we keep it open? Because actually we want social enterprise to be a world movement that is transforming the way business, welfare, social services are done, that are more oriented towards social, ecological, cultural justice. So we really I really want that message to come through. We're trying to change the game of how capitalism is done, or hyper-capitalism is done, okay? It's not just about running business. But at the same time, yes, go Elise.
Yeah, I was going to add to that. There are many ways to change the game, to create and those thousands of small acts are absolutely ways to change the game toward a more socially and regenerative future. We happen to think that social enterprise is one of the biggest levers we could use for change. So we think that social enterprise as a business model helps us to shift that needle and to change the game much quicker, because if we're turning our profits and the acts of that exchange for trade into a much more regenerative future for others, for planet, for the people that we're working with, then we get there faster. So we would say that social enterprise is almost like gold standard ESG. So, we've all heard about the corporate social responsibility and, environmental social governance targets that people are trying to achieve. We would say that social enterprise is not just a small thing. It's actually a really big game changer, because we're putting our profits and a large amount of our profits back into that cause. So it really has the power to shift that needle very quickly if we turn our attention to the gold standard, what we call gold standard ESG.
Thanks, Elise. So we're trying to change a big game. And I see people are also adding what is a social enterprise. And we're not going for a strict definition, but what we're going to say is this, that a social enterprise has to have primarily a social, cultural, or environmental purpose. People designing social enterprises are not like, how do we make money, primarily. They're like, what is the social problem, the cultural problem, the environmental problem we want to solve? Okay, it has to have a social, environmental, cultural purpose. And in a little while, we're going to hear two stories, and we've got the key people in the room today. Like, what are the social purposes they were trying to solve? And they will be clear. They are unemployment for particular groups of people, marginalized from the economy. That becomes the social purpose. And then we try to work out, well, what's the trading activity, along with other forms of income, that will support the social purpose. But there always has to be a trading activity, the selling of service or product. Okay, so try to think like that. What is the social purpose? Are we trying to create employment for a particular group of people? Are we trying to solve an environmental problem or a cultural problem? Okay, so that's kind of the key message. Does that make sense to people? And I'm really happy if people want to ask a question or two live at this moment, or if you want to put it in the chat. So we're not going for a big complex conversation today. We're just trying to get that clear message. Social purpose trading activity, okay? Does that make sense to people? Yeah. We're going to ground it in some stories in a little while. Now, one of the things that we've worked out, of course, and Chris Mundy will speak to this briefly in a moment, you want to unmute yourself, Chris, is that neighbourhood centres across Queensland are already doing this. So, Chris, do you want to just mention something you discovered not long ago?
Yeah, we're conscious that not only neighbourhood centres in Queensland are doing this stuff, but neighbourhood centres or neighbourhood houses around Australia as well. I know particularly in Victoria, they're seeking to understand the extent of social enterprise in the sector down there, which is why we included some questions about social enterprise in our annual survey at the end of last year. And thanks to all of those who participated in that survey, because we just wanted to understand just how big social enterprise is in the sector. And so if I just share. So we asked neighbourhood centres what kinds of social enterprise they're involved in running. And as a little bit of a trick question in there, we put hall hire. We're very conscious that most neighbourhood centres are involved in hiring out hall spaces and office spaces, and it's for a social good. And so under the definition of what a social enterprise is, like we believe that hall hire that most centres are involved in kind of come underneath that umbrella. So we had 52% say that they were involved in hall hire. And as you can see, there's various other percentages there of different types of social enterprises. Op shops stand out, 12%. And 44% said they didn't run a social enterprise, which means, you know, that's 56% running some kind of social enterprise of some sort. And we also sought to understand just what kind of value that the social enterprises were producing. So of the completed responses we got from the survey, we asked them how much in the past financial year social enterprises made, and it was just over $2 million. We extrapolated those figures out. So what we do is we take the medians for each demographic area and we calculate the percentage of neighbourhood centres that are involved in social enterprise in each of those demographic areas. And we estimated that it's just over $3 million that neighbourhood centres are kind of producing in social enterprise value. A median of $27,729 per centre that runs a social enterprise, the averages as well, and they range a fair bit. A social enterprise made $1,335 right up to $697,000 in the last financial year. And we just wanted to have a look at the hall hire figures as well, because I think some of these figures weren't included in some of the social enterprise figures, but over $6 million worth of hall hire from those that completed the survey. We had 89 responses to the survey, extrapolated out to the sector, and that's to 150 centres that we're aware of that operate like a neighbourhood centre. $8.5 million worth of hall hire that's produced in that. 15,718 hours per month were reported to us, where a figure wasn't given to what the local community value of that hall hire was. We calculated as $30 an hour. Yeah, and almost 23,000 hours per month are generated by the sector in haul hire to predominantly social activities. So yeah, it's fascinating that neighbourhood centres are already involved in social enterprise in Queensland.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. That's pretty impressive, and I just wonder, you know, if people want to be able to talk to Chris directly and learn a bit more about that survey and the stories, like reach out to him at Neighbourhood Centres Queensland. So, you know, one of our big resources beyond this project is Neighbourhood Centres Queensland. And the project we're doing will be creating 6 really detailed case studies also to help you. But Elise, just to give you a heads up, the other big resource in the state is the Queensland Social Enterprise Council. And as Richard said earlier, this has come out of a whole bunch of community development work over decades. And Elise, just we'll hear more at the end of today, but if you just give a brief mention of how people might tap into your networks, or how many social enterprises are currently members of your council across Queensland. There's a question for you.
Yeah, well, we can safely say there's at least 230 because they're members. But we know from the Social Enterprise Australia network that there's just over 2,000 social enterprises located across Queensland, and that estimate comes from some Victorian numbers. But, you know, I think the 50 odd that you've surveyed, or the 80, you know, work that out. You know, there's an extra 50 out there. I know there's a couple of social enterprise members on the call today who are neighbourhood centres as well. So we run a network of social enterprises across Queensland, giving them resources and creating additional value for them, connecting them in with other local social enterprises. So you don't have to just exist on your own. You can actually connect out with lots of other social enterprises. We run these sorts of campaigns to government to help unlock funds for areas of social enterprise that might need support, like the neighbourhood centres. So we are advocating for social enterprises across the state, and it doesn't even matter if you're members or not of Queensland Social Enterprise Council. It'd be great if you were, but what we really want to try and drive is making the difference for the future of communities. So by joining the QSEC, the Social Enterprise membership, you get access to a whole bunch of training and access to a whole bunch of networks. But we support social enterprises no matter what size, shape, level of maturity, where you fit into the whole bigger picture. We say that we advocate for everyone. We are agnostic to whether you're members or not. So we'll always try and help, like through Chris, we are happy to share resources and really help complete the picture of communication and what that looks like. Because our real goal is not to drive social enterprise membership. Our real goal is to really change the shape of communities so that we're building resilient and fabulous futures for all communities. And we think social enterprises are the way to go. We would love that to be business as usual, as it said in that topic. Peter, is now the time to talk about all the different things that we're doing, or do you want that later?
Later on.
Cool.
If people live all over the state, like Elise can let you know, there are networks all over the state. So, there are many opportunities. I'd really love us to dip into 2 inspirational stories now. Are you ready for that? Yes, you are, aren't you? And I can see Tanya Stevenson from Hervey Bay Neighbourhood Centres there. Scratch, get ready for story. We're going to do this through a video and then the person, and then you'll have a chance to ask that person a few questions. And we're just going to do 2. So the first one will be Hervey Bay and their story. And the second one will be Richard and the Nunda Co-op. So some of us have heard their story, but you probably haven't watched these really good videos, which are resources from QSEC. So, Chris, we are going to start with the Wandering Teapot, and then Tanya will speak to it. So, ready to go. Hope that this...
So the Hervey Bay Neighbourhood Centre has a social enterprise called the Wandering Teapot, and it was established in 2017 to address our youth unemployment. We knew in Hervey Bay we're a primarily tourist economy, so we looked at joining with a number of local hospitality industry leaders to help us establish the Wandering Teapot. So we now have about 24 young people a year that go through the Wandering Teapot social enterprise to get a Cert 2 in hospitality. The social enterprise is based in the Hervey Bay Neighbourhood Centre, so it delivers a small cafe, but it also looks after our events and catering.
It's about sort of, I guess, seeing what are the barriers for them and what can change that will get them on a pathway to having a job and keeping a job. Often that is job skills, but a lot of the time it's life skills. You know, it's confidence, and it's just the ability to have a conversation or the ability to deliver customer service. What I enjoy the most about it is just seeing the sometimes hard to notice changes and impacts that go on in our trainees.
Well, before I started working here, actually, I was just about the shyest person anyone's ever met, but it's just a great environment really to work in. It's just, everyone's nice and kind, and I work the cafe for about 4 hours, and then after that I've got another 4 hours with plenty of time for like book work. Well, with my last job, I used to work in a service station, and I was just a number there essentially, you know, one of the employees, but here I'm Josh.
I came to the Wandering Teapot probably about 2 years ago. I'd come to a point in my life where I'd left a 13-year abusive relationship. I had 3 kids. I was sort of at a point where I'd had no confidence. I thought because I'd been mum for 10 years that there wasn't really many workplaces that would want me and things like that. I've completed my traineeship now. I've gone into the family support services. I've also gone into aged and disability services. From the person I was 2 years ago to the person I am now, I wouldn't even recognise myself.
What makes a social enterprise unique is that you actually get something back when you support that cause. Every time a customer comes and supports the business, they're also supporting this training and employment opportunities that are going on in the background.
No, I just think that the Wandering Teapot has been able to provide life-changing support for some young people who really didn't get a go, and they've been able to leave here with the skills, knowing they can come back at any time. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Beautiful. Great to have that kind of story video resource. Tanya Stevenson, you look good on video.
Thank you. It's very awkward.
Yeah, horrible seeing yourself, eh?
Yes.
Now, I was watching that going, oh, well, there's a clear social purpose for, you know, employment, traineeship for young people that are marginalised from the economy and had a tough time, and a very clear social trading activity of, you know, cafe and some other things. But I'd love you to add to the story. What would you like to say, seeing as you're here?
I guess we've been going for 3 years now, and it is hard. It has been really hard. We actually started with a cafe in Stockland, and they were kind enough to, you know, let us have a bit of like a collaborative shop up there where we were helping young people to sell their goods as well that they were making and stuff like that. So it was started as a bit of a different initiative, and unfortunately with COVID, the shopping centres just pretty much closed, and so we had to pivot and really look at, well, you know, what were we trying to achieve? We were still sticking to the social purpose of creating opportunities for young people, And hospitality and research in retail in our region is very high employment for the tourism that we have here. And so we decided to look for some funding to build a cafe internally in the centre. And thankfully, we managed to find some Stronger Communities fund. So we thought we already had a good commercial kitchen here. We already did quite good venue hire and bits of catering that were a bit hit and miss. And so once we built that cafe internally right in the centre, that really enabled us to kick it off. And we started off with kind of one-day classes with this confidence in the kitchen program and still no money. But now we have the Skilling Queenslanders for Work funds, which support the young people to get an RTO to deliver their Cert 2 in hospitality. And so, yeah, I think this is the nicest space we've been in, where we might actually break even on our cafe this year. Yes.
So that's important for people to hear. And
yeah.
Talking with you, it's hard to run a business, and you've got to have a 3 to 5 year kind of vision and make sure your board and your committee are kind of aware of that. It's this kind of investment, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. So by incorporating our venue hire, catering and cafe together, we make a surplus, because our venue hire is all pretty much, income, whereas the social purpose of giving young people that opportunity to, right from planning what they're going to cook for the day, prepare for the day, and then sell at the cafe, that is high resource intensive. And while Skilling Queenslanders for Work subsidises some of that in wages for supervision, it doesn't fully cover it. So we do, and because we're a neighbourhood centre, we also, we're not selling $20 meals. We're selling, $5 sandwiches and $7 kind of main meals, because the young people have cooked it. So we, the quality, even though I think it's pretty amazing, we know that people come here to support the young people, and that the service probably isn't going to be as perfect. But they are learning, and it is a training cafe. So people are very gracious and lovely and patient with the young people while they're learning. So yeah, we now have pretty much 24 young people a year coming through, and we take on 2 full-time trainees a year in that cafe now. And yes, we are looking at, as of last night when I was with the board, our profit and loss looks like we might actually break even. So it has been 3 years of making, some quite significant losses in that program, but the social outcomes and the impact for those young people, yeah, it's just amazing.
Can I drill down on that? Because for me, many people keep coming to neighbourhood centres in emergency and crisis. And what I'm hearing here is a story with a social purpose that's kind of really break the cycle for 24 young people. And that's the beauty of this, that we're getting out of that emergency service response only, which is legitimate, to something else that's more generative of change. So I really value what you're doing. And I see Kelly's written a question in the chat. What was essential to creating a sense of belonging and progression for those trainees?
I think first one is our staff. We have amazing staff in that program who are so inclusive, and our volunteers as well. So we also deliver a meal every Wednesday night to those who are homeless, socially disadvantaged or lonely. And so last night, there were 90 people here getting their free meal. And we have amazing volunteers that support that program. And so they naturally kind of were attracted to these young people who were starting to invade their kitchen and wanted to share their skills and support each other, which has been lovely. So I think culture first is what hits them the most. And, you know, I've had plenty of times where some of them have stolen money out of the till, and we go and talk to them all and say, look, you know, if you're having issues, talk to us. Let's not, you know, don't do that. You're impacting the business. Just come and talk to us. And every time I have got that $50 back and they've stood at my door saying, I'm sorry, I got nowhere to sleep tonight. I didn't know what else to do. And it's like, that's okay. You know, you got to survive. We get that, but let's work together. Let's find a solution together so that you don't have to do that, because we want you to be here for a long time and know that you can come back here anytime.
Beautiful culture. And, you know, I think the culture and behaviour of social enterprises is what you're foregrounding there as well. So just any other questions to Tanya? We will take a 5-minute break after Tanya before we get into the Richard story, as we're halfway and I need to go to the toilet. So, yeah, I know, I shouldn't say that. But any other questions to Tanya about their work other than, wow, beautiful? Either in the chat or unmute yourself and ask the question.
Tanya, I've got one. Hey, great story. So the structure of it, I'm not familiar with the SKU process in, you know, like intimately. So did you hire a chef to train them, or was it the trainer under your SKU cert 2 that was doing the leading of the cafe?
So we have a manager over the social enterprise who also looks after our room hire and the comfort kitchen, which is the 1 meal per week.
Yeah.
So she has hospitality experience, but not a chef by any means, but cooks some pretty good meals. And then we have a part-time just cafe assistant. So he helps look after the kids when they do their placements in there. But the RTO under Squilling Queenslanders for Work actually delivers the certificate and the in-kitchen training. So they are a chef, yeah.
So the SKU funding, though, doesn't cover the wages for the management of that project?
It does partly. So usually I think we get about $85,000 a year for SKU. And so it covers a 3-day worker, which they do a lot of time with pickup and drop off because they don't have transport. They then support the kids to do 1 day of social skills. So we don't just deliver the Cert 2. The RTO delivers that 2 days a week on our site, but they come here for 4 days a week. So we then spend another 2 days with them doing life skills and education in our programs. They go and visit other sites as well. So lots of cafes are on board with us to go and get them behind the scenes, and they get to check out, you know, even though I might start in hospitality, there's so many places to grow in that industry. And like, they love it when they get taken behind the scenes to where the vaults and all the beer and everything is stored. And they're like, I want to be a forklift driver and look after, you know, all of the crates that are coming in. So it gives them an opportunity to expand that, you know, it's not just about being a coffee maker. You could actually go into chef, or you could go into the business management, and they get to do all our events as well. So we always have something happening here, and so they get a chance to support that and learn how to host events, set up, pack up, all the fun stuff.
That's a great idea. We all want an events manager, don't we?
Oh, yes. They're very helpful.
Thanks, Sandra. Thanks for that. There's 2 other questions, Tanya. I'm going to ask you to answer them very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So the one is, do you have many participant dropouts? That's the owner question.
Yeah, about 10%.
10%. That's great. And then Helen Bett's question, how did your organisation cope with running at a loss for those first 2 years?
So we had money put aside to make sure. So I think our first year we lost $80,000. So it was a lot of money. And then the second year we were down to about 40. And then now, as of last night, I'm in 12 grand debt. So we're slowly, catching up. But like I said, our venue hire, that's just the cafe. Our venue hire, we've also expanded. So we don't have one site anymore. We have 4 sites. So we automated our booking system, so using a program called Skedder. And we have about 40 different rooms now that you can book online. So no wages now needed for someone processing paperwork and payments. They book and pay online, and our catering now, we can redirect that funding from our venues straight into looking after and supporting the social enterprise. Yeah, so overall, if we incorporate them, we make about a $60,000 surplus.
It's very, very interesting. And thank you, Tanya. We will have to wind the questions up. And of course, people can talk to Tanya. Hervey Bay Neighbourhood Centre is a pretty good community to visit on a road trip. So go and have a look. Just to say that the model, and one of the things we'll get to later today, is there are different models. And in this model at the Hervey Bay Neighbourhood Centre, the social enterprise is embedded within the neighbourhood centre. It's a project of the neighbourhood centre managed by the board. Whereas in the next story that we will get to after the 5-minute break is a different model where the enterprise is a separate legal entity. And, you know, we can talk about different models a bit. So, Tanya, any final words you want to say, because we want to say thank you for turning up today.
No, feel free, chuck me a line, or come and visit. Always happy to share what we've learnt.
Thank you. So look, it's 11:47. I am going to ask, we literally take a 5-minute break. Don't disappear. Don't get off your screens. Just go stretch. You know, I'm trying to introduce healthy movement. You're meant to move every 20 minutes, the latest research says, not sitting for longer than 20 minutes. So just stretch, and we'll come back to the second story. Thank you. Two-minute countdown, 2 minutes, and then we'll get back into it. So if you're moving around, if you're getting that cup of tea, try to get back to the screen in 2 minutes, please. 1 minute countdown. Richard, you're there. You're ready to tell your story. Okay. Can people signal that they're back? Because we don't want to start a video until people are back. Yeah, I can see Dan from the Youth Co-op, Sue Marshall. Nice to see cameras back on. Nice to see you again, Helen. We were in the Bracken Ridge Library together yesterday. And so, as I said, the purpose of today is inspiration and some information. We'll be letting you know what other opportunities there are to get involved in a kind of a bit more of a learning journey that's sustainable and gentle and more informative. We don't want to overload people with information today. So we've heard story one, that model of the Hervey Bay Neighbourhood Centre social enterprise as part of the Neighbourhood Centre, built within and using the community assets of the Neighbourhood Centre. The second story is a bit different. It's the story of the Nunda Community Enterprise Co-op. So Chris, are you ready to bring up that story in the same video format? Thank you. Let's watch this.
My name's Richard Warner. I'm the coordinator of Nunda Community Enterprises Co-op.
Hi, I'm Kirsty Lee. I'm the operations manager for Nunda Community Enterprises Cooperative, and I moonlight as manager for Espresso Train Cafe and Catering.
Nunda Co-op was started about 20 years ago by a small group of people with disabilities who faced a lot of barriers to finding and keeping a job. That group came together and formed a little jobs club, which became a workers' co-op, which now runs a number of businesses, a cafe, a gardening business.
2 soccer club canteens, a food trailer, potential for another cafe in the city.
The co-ops really transformed the local economy, so worked at a sort of place level and at a community level to create economic opportunities, to create jobs that work for people.
It's just such a really great vibe and a really good culture here. Everyone wants to be here. They know that what they're doing is meaningful. They often come in before their shift and hang around and talk to their friends.
Yeah, the thing I like most about working at the co-op is being part of a community and working with the people, real human beings with stories, with names. The other thing I really like about the co-op is it gives you a sense of hope. We can have an economy that is inclusive, that where everyone has a right or an opportunity to have a job and can contribute, can give their gift back to the world.
Our model is not a training and move them on, it's a safe and secure workspace. We don't employ people to make coffee, we make coffee to employ people.
Thank you, Chris. You got to love that mantra at the end, hey? We make coffee because we love people. Richard's here, as is Dan from that cooperative. I just want to point out again, clear social purpose to create employment for people with cognitive, intellectual disabilities. That's how it started, and a very clear set of trading activities, coffee, gardening service, etc. So again, just like what's the social purpose we're trying to tackle, and both stories very clear. So Richard, there you are in your Nunda t-shirt today, are you? No detail, but anything else you want to share with our people today?
Well, I think this the example of the co-op is something that community and neighbourhood centres often do. They work with groups of people to help them form their own organisations. What we often in what we call people's organisations, but often they start as groups. So the co-op started as a little jobs club, supported by a place-based community organisation, managing disability services for people, young people who are homeless, at risk of early school leaving, that kind of thing. And then we actually went to the neighbourhood centre. The first meeting for the co-op was in the local neighbourhood centre in Nunda. And the first 2 volunteers, it started with like social work student support, someone's borrowed mower in the informal economy, a couple of volunteers from the neighbourhood centre, and one of our first contracts was cleaning the neighbourhood centre. So that sort of community support helped us get going. But it formed its own entity based around the work needs of the people and supported by this network of local community organisations. So the other thing the co-op did is, and this is probably a bit over 20 years ago, was getting a contract from council to mow a couple of local parks and maintain the local streetscape. I think you saw, it was Jenny in the video with the blower doing the streetscape. And I was out there looking after a crew this morning doing that. So that was the first example of what's now called social procurement in Australia. And council actually struggled with that. But, you know, in terms of how do we tender to this community organisation when we've got competitive tendering policies and things like that. But that occurred, and now that's a really big movement, and it's something that communities can, and neighbourhood centres or new initiatives can tap into. You know, looking for contracts. Yeah. So that's really, really important part of our story that other people can learn from. Yeah, and then I guess it's been going 25 years. So, and I just wandered into the cafe, and they just gave me this. I don't know if you can see that or if it's backwards in the, but the cafe's been going 20 years. And then, yeah, the co-op 25, and then, you know, one of our members who still makes sandwiches in the cafe, Ian, he designed the logo. So that's the logo we've resurrected for the that was the original one. Yeah. So, and if you look at it now, like it started with just citizen energy, classic community development stuff of bringing people together around a common issue, which was, you know, I'm going to an employment agency and I just can't get a job no matter how hard I try. I've got 20 jobs in a year and I get the sack within 1 or 2 days. So the workers bring people together. Let's do something about it together. We'll start our own business. And now it creates, I think it's over 15,000 hours of work for people a year. About $300,000 goes towards members' wages. It's broadened to include members with from refugee and asylum seeker backgrounds, and probably the turnover is getting up to 2 million. And like Hervey Bay, we have businesses that struggle and we have businesses that do well, and they might subsidise the other, you know, parts of the businesses that are struggling, but then we'll be working to get those businesses happening. So that's a bit of an overview.
That's perfect, Richard. That's great. And I think, you know, what you're highlighting there is some of how do you start? There are different ways of starting, and your explanation of bringing small groups together and then experimenting with business. And some other key things. The model is different to the Hervey Bay model, as you said. This is a social enterprise that's become a separate legal entity. So, and the other thing is the importance of an anchor contract. And if you join us in some future seminars that we'll let you know about, like the procurement that enabled Nunda Cooperative to get a contract, what we call a key anchor contract with council, has been very important. So there's a lot of lessons out there if you're interested in going on this social enterprise journey. Sandra has asked you, I'm interested in the idea of diversified risk via multiple income streams. It's not a question, it's an observation of what you said. Yeah, like any business, diversify, huh?
Diversify and look at multiple income streams and think laterally around, you know, like I think, you know, you've certainly got trade, as you mentioned, Peter, and then you've got income from, you know, providing services. You have philanthropic income, grants and donations, all that kind, you know, it's a blended mix with a primary trading activity, but you do, as particularly as a charity, you've got other sources of income that you should utilise to make it work, because you are putting in lots of extra effort in terms of training and supporting people, often who are experiencing significantly complex barriers that need a lot of extra assistance. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's just to reinforce that. And in both of these stories, it's not about just the trading activity, but income from grants, Skilling Queensland or other grants. In your case, NDIS services to support some of the members of the co-op. So multiple income. But I had the privilege of doing research with Dr. Linda Chavella, interviewing many of your members a few years ago. And what was profoundly beautiful was those workers who had 20 years ago felt completely alone and isolated, now had a profound experience of connection, community, and belonging. So that community stuff too. So Chris Mundy's asked a question. Do you use any Skilling Queen? Is SQW? Is that, yeah, Skilling Queenslanders for Work? And are you an RTO, Richard?
We're not an RTO. We do we do partner. So one of the things I didn't mention is we have clear partnership agreements with supportive community organisations. So our key partner, community partner, runs some SKU programs, and we basically host those programs in our settings, and it provides mutual benefits. They get sort of free use of our equipment and space and expertise in trades, and then we get some staff come in, so it's a good way to get new staff where we need new staff. They've got a good training experience with Skilling Queenslanders, and also some of that initial relationship building and understanding what's going on for people and the barriers they face has been done. And the other key partnership, so we partner with a SKU program. And then also we work very closely. We don't provide, we have an old saying, we're a workspace, not a counselling space, but we work very closely. If someone comes to us, we say, who's the person in your life, or who supports you? Now, it could sometimes be a family member if the person doesn't have services in their life, a very supportive family member, but it's often a worker, a caseworker, or someone, or social worker, or someone who supports that person around things outside of the job that might impact on being able to do the work. So those partnerships are critical. Our model wouldn't work without them.
Yeah, and that's good to let people know. Both these stories are linked to incredible networks and partnerships in the local community. Yeah. So look, any final question, and we'll finish with these two beautiful stories. And our project has documented in detail 6 stories, and they will soon be available on the Neighbourhood Centre Queensland website as a kind of new resource for people that want to explore social enterprise in neighbourhood centres. So any final questions to you, Richard?
Can I just make a comment about this amazing stories? Both stories actually from a social enterprise perspective is so important that is embedded in the community. So as you heard from both stories, I mean, they're both working with cafes and various business ideas, but across the state, what we see is that it's the strengths-based and the asset-based approach that actually works best. So neighbourhood centres are perfectly placed to work with communities around what the assets and the strengths are of their communities. So it may not be coffee shops or gardening clubs or things like that that happen in your neighbourhood. Looking at what your strengths are in your community from an asset. What are my assets here? How do you draw those people together and say, well, what business development could we put together that actually fills a market gap in our community? And in some instances, we've got community groups that actually centre around an alliance of business ideas that their communities are falling short in delivering. So it could be health services or transportation or whatever that is. And it's actually a viable business because it's actually based in what's available to them and what's required in that particular community. So it changes in every single setting. So as a neighbourhood centre, you're perfectly placed to have a look at your community and look at what are the strengths of my community, where are the asset bases here that we can draw on to pull together a business idea that might have traction and a market opportunity to grow and to prosper in our community. So it's actually when you measure and track those 3 different elements, what my assets are, our skills, and what's needed in our community, that really hits the sweet spot around a social enterprise. And I think both these stories highlight that really well.
That's very helpful, Elise. And we've been in our face-to-face workshops using what's called the leaky bucket metaphor to kind of see where is there a market gap in a community where money's leaving the community because there's no local service or local business. So we've got many ways of thinking about the opportunity. It's not just a good idea. It's coming out of pretty good analysis. Thank you. There is one last question. We'll make this the last one. It's a tough one, I think, Richard. I can't know if you see it on the chat.
I can't see it, sorry. Yeah.
How do you maneuver through the workplace health and safety issues in this kind of disability inclusive? It's a bit long, but basically, how do you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we've got a really excellent touchwood health and safety record, and that is because I think because we really care about our people. But we build the supervisory, we build the work around the people as one of our sort of sayings. So, and how that works is we have very close sort of supervision. So there's always somebody with somebody watching. I mean, people do their work pretty independently, but there's a level of oversight and I guess good training, and then matching people to jobs that are within their sort of ability and skill. That said, there's some people doing work now who I actually shouldn't have, but I underestimated people's ability to, for example, to drive tractors or to even do some more technical tasks like, hedging or something like that, or dangerous, semi-dangerous equipment, or tractors can be pretty dangerous. But yeah, so there's people have built skills up over time that neither we nor they maybe thought they would be able to accomplish. They do it very safely. Yeah.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Richard. And those are our two kind of central stories for today. I think Elise in a little while will be able to let you know there are a lot of other great video stories from all over the state on their website. So we're going to move into the last bit of this little online seminar where we're going to say where to from here, what are your options for support. It's a very good historical moment to be interested in social enterprise. There are, as kind of emerging ecologies of support, grants, information. The pioneers have done some of the hard work, and people like Tanya and Richard are those pioneers. So quickly, our project will follow this webinar, which has really been inspiration and information, with 2 or 3 online, more dialogical circles. So we're calling them a community of practice. They'll happen each month. You'll be invited to that as people who are registered today. And there'll be a lot more chance to kind of come with your story of where you're at and what your ideas are, and we'll be able to kind of work through them in a more dialogical way. So we will let you know about them. The next one is the 23rd of March at 11 o'clock, and then the 20th of April at the same time. So you'll all be invited to that. We're here to go on a bit of a journey with those that want to. Some of you today might go, thank you, got the inspiration, got the information, that's all I want. Some of you might want to continue to engage. Okay, so you will get that invitation, and we'd love you to come along. Secondly, QSEC has a lot of resources and stories, and Elise, this is your chance, without overwhelming people, to give people a sense of where they could go in this cross sector, neighbourhood centre, social enterprise interaction. Yeah.
How do I not overwhelm people? It's such a huge space, but you're in safe hands with Praxis and Richard and Tanya, and some really great experience in the room, as well as the stuff that you're going to be learning in future states. So I'm not going to go too much into detail, but I do want to point you to our website, which is www.qsec.org.au. If we might put it in the chat room if we can. But on that website, we've actually created an enormous amount of free resources for anyone who's interested in social enterprise. Why I say org is because if you go to .com, it'll take you to somewhere else, very horsey, and we're not them. It's org.au. But we have collected, there's 10 years of volunteer blood, sweat and tears. I'm looking at you, Richard, they've actually created this amazing resource, and we've been able to, in the last 3 years, due to funding, collect and collate it in one spot. We often get comments from people who've stumbled on our website, or we've pointed them to it, and they've gone, oh my gosh, there is so much to learn and so much to see and so much to do. Don't be overwhelmed. It's compartmentalized so that you can take it at your own pace. You can work your way through your areas of interest. The one thing I really would love you to have a look at, though, is the regional map. And on that regional map, if you click on the map where you're located, the most amazing thing is that you'll be able to see other social enterprises who have been doing the work, and you're not alone in the space. And that's really important to understand, that there are networks of people across Queensland in just about every corner of the state that have done the work before, that are trying things, failing with things, succeeding in things that you can learn from and connect with. And you can also see who else is doing things in this area, so that when you're starting to look at business planning or what can we do, there might be some collaboration points rather than trying to set up something new. You might be able to actually collaborate with others in your space, in your local area, so that you're really aware of what's happening and who's who in the zoo and how to connect and engage. Sue Marshall's on the line today. She's my colleague, and she's been running industry forums, network events. Tanya, in your neck of the world, coming up very soon, there's some really fantastic industry forums happening in Bundaberg, Hervey Bay, Wide Bay, to really help connect and engage social enterprises with business opportunities and with organisations who might be interested in hiring social enterprise endeavours. So these things are happening all across the state all of the time. We also run webinars around HR issues and normal business issues. We've got one coming up next week, for instance, around the new HR laws. So we're tapped into the business community on one side so that you can start to understand, what do I look like in the business sense and how do I actually operate as a business? And then we're tapped into the not-for-profit and QCOS and a lot of the support services that go along with community services on the other side. And what we're trying to do is draw those two worlds together, because that's where we play, is right smack bang in the middle. So it's a nice blend of how do we run a business and make it profitable and create advantage, and how do we get that support from our communities and from our areas that we're interested in. So it might be just a localized area, or it could be something that you're looking at industry-wide. So you could actually go onto our directory, which is another place on the website. And in that directory, if you type in something like circular economies, like everybody's talking about, how do we recycle, reuse, repurpose goods and services, you can type in circular economies and find out who across the state is actually working on that right now. Are they doing really interesting things that I want to connect in with? How do I actually manage the products and byproducts? Are there licenses and things like that? We can tap you into those industry practices that are really specialised as well. So that's the beauty of QSEC, because we work across all of the different platforms that you might think, this could intersect with communities, this could intersect with business, this could intersect with not-for-profit laws or IR laws. We try and gather those resources from both sides of the camp and nestle it into ways that people can access quite easily. So on the front end of the website, you'll see all of the free stuff. But on the back end, when you if you sign up as a QSEC member, there's a whole bunch of resources that we've collected over the 10 years of operations around specialist information for social enterprises particularly. So there's business model canvas when you want to try and start to work out, is this business viable? There's theories of change. How are we actually going to make change out of this business? There's information about how to do procurement, like we were just talking about that with Richard. Where do I start? How do I get myself on a panel for providers, for governments? So there's all sorts of information that you can tap into on the back end of QSEC as a member as well. So without trying to overwhelm you, there's a bunch of support there for people who are interested in social enterprises. Sue's, as I said, running all these great connecting networks so that you don't feel like you're alone, that you are able to reach out to others in the space and really help to connect and engage with those people. And I'm happy to take any questions or refer you to Sue for follow-up information about the industry forums and the events that we've got coming up. We have a massive events page. There's heaps of stuff on there. You can spend hours.
Just a couple of minutes for questions, either in the chat to Elise. I mean, I hope you're all on the website right now, checking it out.
We should see a spike in our, oh, look, everybody's on the website. We'll go back on the Google Analytics. Oh, look, everyone's there.
I'm aware we've got 10 minutes. I do want to do a little checkout before you leave. Just put, we'll be asking you what's one thing you take from today to put in the chat. So please kind of like let us know what that one thing is. Are there any questions of Elise or Sue before I give you a final challenge?
Can I make a quick comment? If there's not...
As long as it's quick, Richard, yeah.
Real quick. Connecting in with an organisation like QSEC and the regional groupings, and there's regional champions in your local area, is really important, particularly from a community work perspective. And that's why we started QSEC, why we got involved from Nundas. Well, we didn't start QSEC, but why we got involved with QSEC was it's all about hybrid thinking. So if you're a community worker, you're used to a certain way of thinking and doing, and it's actually really helpful to connect with others who might come from a business background or a different kind of background with different knowledges and expertise. So that sort of hybrid thinking is important to social enterprise, and you get it through connecting with others doing, you know, similar type of work. So that's the real value of connecting with QSEC.
The link Rachel put in the chat, which has qsec.org.au regional activation, links you to all the courses and the kind of network you can plug into. Okay, so look, people, thank you. Two little things. First one, Peter's challenge. I know what it's like in a neighbourhood centre. I'm sitting in one right now. My partner, Rachel, who ran the Nambour Neighbourhood Centre, I know that they're busy places full of crisis, activity, things you've got to do. And my challenge is, how do you create a little space in your mind and with some other people to go, while we're doing all this crisis stuff, how do we also create the energy and imagination to do something that's a bit longer term that can break the cycle of crisis for some people, young people, people not being able to keep a job. I'm aware that there's a vortex of crisis, and I know what that feels like every day you go to the office. And I guess in this seminar, we're saying there are models, there are stories, and I guess the challenge is, how do you create a bit of space to find out about them and go on a journey, or expand the journey you've already started that maybe you didn't even think of as a social enterprise. So that's my challenge. And now, as we finish, could people please, a final few comments, you could put it in the chat, or you can unmute and just say, thanks, what I got out of today is. That would be a really lovely way to finish in the next 5 minutes. And I'll end up handing over to Chris as our host to finish. But please, any takeaways from today? Someone's got to get us going in the chat, or Elise wants to start. What's your takeaway?
My huge takeaway from today is that, you know, there's more than 50% of neighbourhood centres already running a social enterprise. Thank you. Wow.
Wow. Yep. They didn't even know necessarily. Other takeaways?
I kind of feel like this is the essence of what a neighbourhood centre is. You know, this is what we're all about. We're all about creating social good and putting any profit that we can gather back into doing more good stuff. So really exciting. Thank you.
Sandra. Anyone else in chat or opportunity to voice your voice? We got some lovely things coming in the chat, inspirational, great stories. Just discovered who my regional champion is. Takeaway of local assets and skills and market opportunity. Yeah, the huge asset QSEC is to us.
Yeah, I think there's lots of opportunities in Logan, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Ron.
Yeah, for sure. That's where we're based.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got lots of good people. So, yeah.
There's a good council here too. Logan City Council is connected to the community.
Yeah. Actually, just on that note, and this issue of procurement, the workshop we ran at Moreton Council last week with lots of community orgs, the community development officer from regional council informed us that they are often looking for local suppliers of services, like a marquee tent, or, you know, and there's no local providers. So they end up having to get the provider from Brisbane or the Gold Coast or Sunshine Coast. And these are really kind of opportune niche markets where a community organisation could say, wow, we invest by a marquee tent, we've got a business to create employment. So talking to your local council around where they supply for their services is actually a very good opportunity.
Yeah.
Leanne's talked about tapping into local energy. Yes, energy is the heart of everything. So, thank you, people. I want to thank QSEC, Elise and Sue, for joining us. I want to thank Chris Mundy from Neighbourhood Centres Queensland and his boss, M. James, for supporting this seminar, and Chris doing a lot of the tech. Chris, I, in acknowledgement of you as the peak body, wanted to give you a final word before we say goodbye. We will let you know about the community of practice sessions in March and April. So please know that you can join us in a journey of more inspiration. Okay? Chris.
Yeah, just want to say it's been a great opportunity to partner with you and enhance social enterprise in the neighbourhood centre sector. We'll keep the sector updated on any more opportunities in that space, and obviously tap into the forum, the online forum, communities of practice that are coming up. But yeah, we'll definitely be in touch with the future on how to enhance this work in the sector.
Thank you, Chris. And thanks again, Richard and Tanya, and all the other wonderful people here. I know about half of you. I hate doing this online stuff. I want to go and now shake your hand and have a cup of tea, you know, and do the real work of yarning in the corridor, because we often know that's where the real work happens, hey? So sorry we can't do that, but thank you for giving an hour and a half. I can't believe how quickly that time's gone. Thanks for turning up, and have a great day. We'll reach out to you.
Yeah, and there'll be a fantastic conference in October where we can all get together and have that cup of tea in person with one another at the Queensland Community Development Conference in Moreton Bay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that will be announced soon. So, yeah, be aware of that. Thanks, Ruth. Okay, I'm going to bring this as the chair to a close. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your Thursday. Bye-bye.
Thank you.